You already know what you want. You have known for a while. Not in the vague way of someone who has a general sense of a better life somewhere in the distance. In the specific way, the kind where you can feel the exact shape of it, the texture of what it would be like to wake up inside it, the specific quality of relief that would arrive if the thing you have been quietly carrying as a wish finally became real. You know what it is, and somewhere underneath all the reasoning you have done about why it might not be possible, underneath all the evidence you have accumulated about why things tend to work out differently than you want them to, underneath the specific exhaustion of wanting something for long enough that the wanting itself starts to feel like a kind of defeat, somewhere underneath all of that, you still believe it could happen. That belief is not naive. That belief is not the last symptom of someone who has not yet faced reality. That belief is the most psychologically sophisticated thing happening inside you right now. And Carl Jung spent his entire career building the framework that explains exactly why. Stay with me. Because what I am about to walk you through is not motivation. It is not positive thinking dressed up in psychological language. It is not a promise that the universe will rearrange itself around your desires if you simply wish hard enough. It is something far more specific than any of that. It is the precise psychological mechanism by which the mind stops blocking what it wants and begins allowing it. And it works in 48 hours, not because 48 hours is magic, because 48 hours is exactly how long it takes for the nervous system to register a genuine shift in how you are orienting yourself toward your own life. And the shift I am going to show you how to make is one most people never make. Not because they lack desire, because they lack the specific interior preparation that Jung identified as the actual foundation of everything they are trying to attract. Jung said something that most people in the manifestation space quote, without fully understanding what he meant. He said that the mind does not merely reflect reality, it participates in creating it. This is not a spiritual claim. This is a clinical observation made across decades of documented psychological research. What Jung was pointing toward is this: the state of your unconscious mind, the beliefs running beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, the emotional patterns that activate faster than thought, the expectations your nervous system carries into every situation before you have consciously decided how to approach it. These are not passive observers of your life. They are active participants in what your life produces. Jung studied what he called the collective unconscious, the layer of psychic reality that exists beneath the personal unconscious of individual experience. And what he found there was a living field of archetypal patterns, ancient structures of meaning and possibility that connect every human psyche to a shared reservoir of potential. When your personal psychic energy is aligned with these deeper patterns, things that seemed impossible begin to happen, not through magic, through the specific psychological reality that what you genuinely believe to be possible at the deepest levels of your unconscious mind is what your nervous system will move toward, recognize opportunities for, and make inevitable through the accumulation of small unconscious choices that compound over time into a fundamentally different life. The 48 hours I am going to walk you through are the hours in which you fundamentally change what your unconscious believes is possible for you, not through affirmations alone, not through visualization alone, through a specific sequence of interior preparations that Jung identified as the conditions under which the psyche shifts from resistance to receptivity, from blocking what it wants to finally allowing it in. The first thing you need to understand is why most people do not attract what they want. And the answer is not what most people think. It is not lack of desire. The desire is there, intensely, sometimes painfully, persistently there. It is not lack of belief in a general sense. Most people believe the thing they want is possible in theory. They have seen other people achieve it. They understand intellectually that there is no cosmic law preventing it from being theirs. The reason most people do not attract what they want is something Jung identified in his clinical work as the fundamental split in the psyche. He called it the conflict between the conscious intention and the unconscious expectation. Here is what that means in practical terms. You consciously want the relationship, the opportunity, the change, the version of your life that has been living in your imagination as a wish for longer than you want to admit. But your unconscious, the part of your mind that was shaped by every experience you have had, every belief you absorbed from the environments you grew up in, every time you wanted something and it did not arrive. Your unconscious has a completely different expectation. Your unconscious has been quietly compiling evidence. Evidence that certain things tend not to work out for you. Evidence that the specific kind of want you are carrying right now has historically been followed by disappointment. Evidence that the version of yourself who receives what they want is somehow fundamentally different from the version of yourself that is currently sitting here reading this. And that evidence, however old it is, however irrelevant it might be to your actual current circumstances, is what your nervous system is operating from. Every time you take a step toward what you want, every time an opportunity presents itself that could move you closer, your unconscious fires a warning, not loud enough to hear, but powerful enough to act on. You hesitate. You self-sabotage. You find reasons why this is not quite the right moment, or the right situation, or the right version of the thing you were looking for. You repel the very thing you are trying to attract, not because you are broken, because your unconscious believes that this is what happens. And the unconscious does not respond to arguments. It responds to experience. The 48 hours ahead of you are about giving your unconscious a new experience, one powerful enough to begin rewriting the expectation. Jung identified what he called psychic energy, the finite reservoir of emotional and psychological resource that each person carries, and that either moves toward the life they want or away from it, depending on how that energy is being directed. Most people leak psychic energy constantly without realizing it. They leak it through rumination, through the mental replay of past failures and disappointments, through the rehearsal of worst-case scenarios that the brain generates to protect against future pain, but that consume in the present the very energy required to create something different. They leak it through what Jung called unconscious participation, the automatic emotional absorption of other people's fear, other people's limiting beliefs, other people's evidence for what is and is not possible. They leak it through ambivalence, the specific psychic drain of being divided against yourself, of wanting something with one part of your mind while another part is compiling arguments for why you should want it less. The first 24 hours of this process are about stopping the leak, not through force, through the specific psychological practice of containment that Jung identified as the prerequisite for any genuine manifestation. Here is what you're going to do in the first 24 hours, and I want you to approach this not as a ritual or a technique, but as what it actually is, a genuine reorientation of your interior life. The first thing is this: you are going to spend 15 minutes in complete interior honesty about what you actually believe, not what you want to believe, not what you are working on believing, not the affirmation version. What you actually believe. Find a quiet space, sit with your specific desire, the exact thing you want to attract, and instead of visualizing it arriving, simply observe what your nervous system does when you hold it in your awareness. Notice what arises. The doubt that surfaces before you have consciously invited it. The specific flavor of fear that is not about the desire being bad or wrong, but about the possibility that wanting it will simply produce another version of not having it. The automatic downward revision your mind makes. The way it takes the full version of what you want and immediately begins constructing a more modest version, a safer version, a version that wants less so it has less distance to fall. Notice all of it without trying to change it. This is the beginning of what Jung called making the unconscious conscious. You cannot change what you cannot see, and most people spend their entire lives trying to attract things while running an unconscious program they have never once looked directly at. In these 15 minutes, you're going to look directly at it, not to judge it, not to fight it, but to acknowledge it, to say internally and with complete honesty, this is what I actually believe about this, and this belief is old. It was formed in circumstances that no longer exist, and it has been running my life without my full awareness. That acknowledgement is not failure. It is the most important step in this entire process, because Jung was precise about what happens when the unconscious is finally acknowledged rather than bypassed. It stops having to express itself through sabotage. The moment you see the pattern clearly, it loses much of its power to operate beneath your awareness. The second thing you are going to do in the first 24 hours is a practice Jung would have recognized as the activation of the transcendent function. He used that term to describe the specific psychological process by which two opposing forces inside a person, the conscious desire and the unconscious resistance, resolve into something genuinely new. Not a compromise, not one side overriding the other. A third thing, one that could not have existed without the tension of both. Here is how you access it. After your 15 minutes of honest observation, You are going to write, not affirmations, not a letter to the universe, something more specific and more psychologically honest than either of those things. You are going to write the exact conversation between your conscious desire and your unconscious resistance. Let the desire speak first. Write what it actually wants, not the tidy version, the raw version. The thing you want so much that even putting it into words feels slightly risky, because making it explicit makes it vulnerable in a way that keeping it as a vague wish does not. Then let the resistance speak. Write the fear, the specific not-again quality of a nervous system that has learned to protect you by managing your expectations. The old evidence, the accumulated data from every time this particular hope did not produce the outcome it was reaching toward. Let both speak completely, and then sit with what is there, without immediately trying to resolve it, without jumping to the affirmation that overrides the fear before it has been fully heard. Just sit with the tension of both existing simultaneously. Jung said that the psyche's natural movement is toward resolution. When you stop forcing the resolution and allow the tension to be fully present, the unconscious begins to offer something it never offers when it is being bypassed. It's actual cooperation. The shift does not happen through winning the argument with yourself. It happens through finally having the full conversation. The third practice of the first 24 hours is what Jung called the reorientation of the libido. He used that word not in its narrow modern sense, but in its original meaning, psychic energy, the fundamental life force of the interior world. Most people's psychic energy is chronically oriented toward the past, toward the accumulated evidence of what has not worked, toward the specific emotional residue of experiences that hurt in ways they are still carrying. The reorientation is the conscious, deliberate, sustained act of redirecting that energy toward what is actually possible now, not by pretending the past did not happen, but by recognizing that the past is not the present, that the circumstances that produced the disappointments you are still carrying are not the circumstances you are standing in right now, that the version of yourself that experienced those disappointments was operating with less understanding, less awareness, less genuine alignment with what you actually want than the version of yourself that is sitting here now having looked directly at the pattern for the first time. Here is the practice. You are going to spend 20 minutes, once in the morning and once in the evening of this first 24 hours, in a specific form of visualization that is different from what most people are taught. You are not going to visualize the outcome. You are going to visualize the version of yourself who has already become the person for whom that outcome is natural. There is a crucial difference between these two things. Visualizing the outcome keeps the ego in the role of someone waiting for something external to arrive. Visualizing the version of yourself who has already become the person who naturally inhabits that outcome, who moves through the world as someone for whom this kind of thing is possible, expected, normal. This rewires the unconscious from the inside out. Because the unconscious does not operate on logic. It operates on identity. It produces what it believes to be consistent with who you are. Change what it believes about who you are, and what it produces changes with it. In your visualization, do not see the thing you want arriving. See yourself as the person who already lives in a world where this kind of thing arrives. Feel the difference in your nervous system between the person waiting for something exceptional to happen and the person for whom this is simply the quality of life they have come to expect. Let that feeling settle in your body, not as a performance, as a genuine interior experience, because your nervous system cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is actually happening. This is not a quirk of psychology. It is the specific mechanism through which belief becomes biology, and biology becomes behavior, and behavior becomes a life. The second 24 hours are where the exterior preparation begins. Jung understood something about the relationship between the interior world and the exterior environment that most people never fully reckon with. He said they mirror each other, not metaphorically, psychologically. The state of the space you inhabit is a constant external signal to your unconscious about what kind of life you're living. A space that reflects chaos, accumulation, things that no longer serve you, objects and arrangements that belong to a version of your life you have already outgrown but not yet cleared. That space is telling your unconscious every moment you occupy it that this is who you are and this is what you have. Clearing it is not a cleaning task, it is a psychological statement. It is telling your nervous system that you are making room, that the life you have been carrying as a wish has somewhere to arrive, that the version of yourself who lives that life has space to inhabit. Spend the first portion of your second 24 hours in deliberate physical preparation of your environment, not a complete renovation. A specific and intentional act of clearing. Identify what in your immediate environment belongs to a version of you or a version of your life that you are ready to leave behind. Not what you should leave behind according to some external standard. What genuinely represents the old configuration. The thing that whenever you see it carries an emotional weight that is not aligned with where you are trying to go. Remove it from your immediate space. Not forever necessarily, but out of the field of your daily visual and energetic environment. Then spend time making the space feel like one that reflects who you are becoming rather than who you have been. Not through decoration, through intention. Jung would recognize this as the exteriorization of the interior shift, the physical environment becoming a mirror of the psychological reorientation that began in the first 24 hours. The second practice of the second 24 hours is what I want you to understand as the most psychologically significant step in this entire process. Jung called it the act of reception. Most people in the manifestation space talk endlessly about sending, about intending, projecting, asking, declaring. They talk almost never about receiving, and receiving is the skill that almost universally determines whether any of the rest of it produces results. Here is what receiving actually looks like as a psychological practice. It begins with something deceptively simple, noticing what is already arriving. Jung observed that people who are operating from a state of unconscious resistance to what they want are also largely unable to perceive the movement that is already occurring in the direction of their desires, the small synchronicities that appear in the direction of what they want, the conversations that arise unexpectedly and carry information relevant to where they are trying to go, the interior moments of clarity that point toward a specific action or direction, the opportunities that present themselves in forms that are slightly different from what was expected and therefore go unrecognized. All of it is arriving, constantly. But the nervous system that is oriented toward resistance, that is running the old expectation of disappointment, filters it out. It is not looking for evidence of movement. It is looking for confirmation of stagnation. The practice of reception is the deliberate reorientation of your attention. For the entirety of your second 24 hours, you're going to operate as someone who is genuinely looking for evidence that things are moving. Not evidence that the final outcome has arrived. Evidence of movement, every small thing that arrives in the direction of what you want. A thought that feels genuinely aligned with your desire, rather than a rehearsal of your resistance to it. A conversation that opens something. A moment where the specific quality of what you want is briefly present in your current experience. Notice it. Acknowledge it internally. Let it register as real. This is not bypassing the reality of where you are. This is training your nervous system to become a receiver rather than a filter. And the nervous system that learns to receive small evidence of movement becomes the nervous system that eventually receives what it has been wanting, because it has finally stopped sending back what was coming. Jung also identified what he called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, moments where the outer world and the inner world align in a way that the rational mind wants to call random, but that carries the specific quality of precision that randomness does not produce. The right person appearing at the right moment. The answer arriving through a channel that had nothing obvious to do with the question. The circumstance that removes an obstacle you did not know how to remove yourself. Jung was careful about synchronicity. He did not say that the universe is arranging events for your benefit. He said something more precise. He said that when the individual psyche is genuinely aligned, when the conscious intention and the unconscious expectation are moving in the same direction rather than against each other, the person begins to notice and respond to possibilities that were always present, but that the divided psyche could not perceive clearly enough to act on. The synchronicities do not increase. The awareness of them does. And awareness is everything, because an opportunity you do not see is an opportunity you cannot take. And most of what people are looking for is already moving toward them. They are simply not oriented toward receiving it. Here is what happens at the end of 48 hours when this process has been genuinely followed, not perfectly, not without the mind wandering or the old resistance surfacing, or the moments of doubt that are simply part of being human in the middle of a genuine interior shift, but followed with honesty and with the specific intention of a person who has decided that they are going to stop running the old program by default. The psyche does not transform completely in 48 hours. Jung never claimed it would, but it does begin to register the shift. The nervous system that spent years operating from the expectation of resistance begins to experience something genuinely different, a loosening. the specific quality of interior movement that occurs when something that has been held rigid finally has permission to change. You will notice it not as a breakthrough, as a difference in how ordinary moments feel. A quality of openness in situations that previously felt closed. A sense of possibility in areas of your life where your nervous system previously generated only the low-level anticipation of disappointment. A different relationship with the desire itself. Less painful, less desperate, less organized around the gap between where you are and where you want to be. More like a direction. A genuine orientation of your interior life towards something real. That is moving, that will continue to move. At the pace that is actually required for what you are trying to attract, to arrive in a form that lasts. Not the pace your impatience would set, the pace the thing itself requires. Jung said something toward the end of his career that I want you to carry with you after this. He said that the greatest adventure available to a human being is not the conquest of the outer world. It is the exploration of the inner one. And the specific treasure of that inner exploration is not comfort or certainty or the elimination of difficulty. It is alignment. The specific psychological condition of a person who is no longer at war with their own life, who has stopped spending their energy fighting the gap between what they have and what they want, and has redirected that energy toward genuine movement in the direction of everything they are actually capable of. That alignment is not a destination. It is a practice, a daily, ongoing, never quite finished practice of choosing the orientation of your interior world, consciously, with the awareness that the choice matters, that the 48 hours you give to this process are not a magic window. They are the beginning of a different relationship with your own desire, one in which the desire is no longer something you carry as a wound, but something you carry as a direction, a genuine interior compass, pointing consistently toward the life that has been available to you all along, waiting not for circumstances to change, for your unconscious to finally stop objecting to its own best outcome. The 48 hours begin now, not when you feel ready, not when the circumstances seem more favorable, not when the version of you who deserves what you want has finally been sufficiently earned. Now, exactly as you are, with everything you are carrying, with the resistance still present, and the desire still real, and the specific quality of wanting something enough to actually do something genuinely different to receive it. Now, the unconscious is listening. It has always been listening. Give it something different to hear. If something in this reached the part of you that has been wanting something for long enough that the wanting itself has started to feel like a burden, stay with what you felt. That feeling is not wishful thinking. It is the psyche recognizing what is actually possible for it. Share this with someone who has been carrying a desire they have almost stopped believing in. They need to hear that the wanting is not the problem. The orientation is, and orientation can change in 48 hours, starting now. Subscribe for more of what Jung actually discovered about the psychology of the life you are trying to build.